Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin' Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right, everybody. It's time for the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them. And time has been super tight lately, so we're just kind of throwing this together on the fly. But we don't want to miss because I haven't broken my streak yet. But this is the show where I read a lot of comic books and I'll let you know what I thought about them. And we always start with a pick of the week. And this week's pick of the week, Destro issue number 2 from Image Comics, Skybound, Dan Waters, Andre Bresson, Adriano Lucas. This book frickin' rocks. It is amazing. Now, I've already been super into everything that the Energon universe has been doing. They're some of my favorite comic books right now. They're bringing out that old school inner fanboy, right? They get me super hyped and excited to check out every single one of these. But Dan Waters is actually elevating G.I. Joe more than I've ever seen it elevated with the pages of Destro. This book is amazing. Not only is it a great badass character and a great badass book, but it is actually exploring these interesting themes about war and war throughout history and those who profit off of war. And it's so freaking crazy. The tension between the Crimson Twins and Destro just amps up to another level here in this issue. It's like a Cold War of sorts, an open war that becomes a Cold War that's leading to more open war. This book is amazing. The art is great. The colors are great. And even if the Energon universe, even if you think it's not for you, you definitely need to check out Destro, because Destro is elevated G.I. Joe. I mean, that's just what it is. It's elevated G.I. Joe. And I hate that term elevated, but that's really what this is. All right. Also from Image, we've got Witchblade issue number 1, a brand new Witchblade. This is starting from scratch. Marguerite Bennett on the writing, Giuseppe Cafaro on the line art. This was all right. It was decent. It was okay. Right now, I've never been the hugest Witchblade fan, for instance, but I do like Mark Silvestri. And this is definitely, for instance, Witchblade back in the 90s when Image was really, like when comics as a whole was really kind of tanking. Witchblade, Darkness, Fathom, it was Mark Silvestri that kept the ship afloat in the mid to late 90s, right? And it's cool to see this title back because I do think this title deserves to be on the shelves. When I met Mark Silvestri earlier this year, he was talking about this. He was really, really hyped for it. I think it's decent. I think it's solid. It's a cool reboot. But like I said, I was never the biggest Witchblade fan to begin with. So this was a cool way to jump in and, like, it's a whole new start. It's a reboot. It's like nothing that happened before matters. This is a complete relaunch of the title. But knowing where we're going and knowing the connections that are going to be made, it actually makes it a pretty exciting read. So I thought it was all right. I thought it was decent. Then we've got Redcoat issue number 4. Now, I'm loving Ghost Machine and everything that Jeff Johns and company are doing over there. But Redcoat's been the one that has been the weakest to me. And I know a lot of people out there like Damien from Sleepy Reader 666. I know a lot of personal friends where Redcoat's their favorite out of these books. And I love history. I love American history. I love Revolutionary War history. I love this kind of stuff. I even like roguish, bastardly type characters, right? But for some reason, this never clicked with me until issue 4. This was awesome. There's a big reveal at the end here about who the actual villain is. And the reveal happens in such a fascinating way. And it's punctuated with a nice panel at the end. I liked this. I thought this was the best issue of Redcoat yet, and has definitely gotten me on board with the series. All right, then we got Fish Flies, issue number 7 from Jeff Lemire. This is the final issue of Fish Flies. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do remember there was like an essay at the end of issue number 1 that stated this was meant to be going as long as it was supposed to, and maybe Jeff Lemire thought that he would be doing this for a while, but here we are 7 issues later, and it's wrapping up. Now, it wraps up in a really solid fashion, bringing everything back to where it started and kind of closing the circle. I loved this book. It's filled with a lot of nuance and it's filled with a lot of emotion, right? But I do feel like we could have lingered in this just a little bit longer. This feels like an abrupt and I don't know. It feels like a super abrupt, yet still earned ending, but I did like it. But the thing I really want to do is sit down with all 7 issues or the collection when it eventually comes out and read it as a whole in one sitting and see what happens. Then we've got Plastic Death and Dolls issue number 2. If you know anything about the Material trilogy from our friends Doug Wagner and Daniel Hilliard, you will know how wild these books can be. Plastic, this is a sequel to a book that came out before, and we're actually learning more about the main character, his past, what started his fascination with plastic material and dolls in particular, but it's fun. It's a book that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it doesn't mean that the book itself is not serious. I like this book. It's violent, it's gory when it needs to be, and everything that Daniel and Doug have been doing together, whether it's vinyl, whether it's plastic, or whether it's plush, it just rocks. It just absolutely rocks. Then we've got Remote Space issue number 2. By the way, I forgot to mention, Redcoat has the smell of the week. It smells like the Revolutionary War. So anyway, Remote Space issue number 2. I was really surprised by issue number 1. I love this concept. It's about an Earth in which some people on Earth left because there was like climate change or some kind of crazy environmental disaster, and a lot of people left Earth, and they have evolved into these like Cenobite-esque cyborg type creatures, right? Those who have been left on the Earth, they have evolved into these like harsh, monstrous creatures to deal with this new environmental change, and now both factions of humanity, hundreds of years later, are back together and trying to figure it out. I thought the concept was great. The art is amazing. So this is all done by Cliff Rathburn, who we normally know as a colorist, but he's doing everything here. He's doing the writing. He's doing the artwork. He's doing the color art. He's doing everything. I think he may even be doing the lettering. He is totally doing the lettering. Created, story, full color art and cover, lettering and logo, all by Cliff Rathburn. Really cool vision, really cool stuff. I liked this issue a little bit less than issue number 1. Issue number 1 had a lot of info dumps, but I did think that the concept was solid enough. Here, it's hard to kind of get back into the flow of this story with issue number 2 for some reason. It's only a 4-issue series, but I do think the ambitious nature of it is to be rewarded by reading all 4 issues. So that's definitely what I'm going to do. All right, then we got Misery, issue number 2 from Todd McFarlane and our friend Zyman Kudronsky. Artwork is fine. Story's just okay. It's decent. The first issue of Misery, and this is about Cyan, the daughter of Terry Fitzgerald and Wanda, kind of like Spawn's stepdaughter in a way, if you will. She's developed these powers. She's dealing with some stuff. This was a really muddy and clunky issue. The art was fine, but the story was kind of all over the place. And in the first issue, it felt very disconnected from current events in the Spawn comics. Here, it kind of forces the issue that it is connected to current events in Spawn comics. And it just doesn't feel natural. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. Let's jump over to DC. We got Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter issue number 1. This is an Elseworlds, officially Elseworlds branded book. Jay Kristoff on the writing, Terso on the artwork. And I was really nervous. I thought Dark Knights of Steel was really good. It's like the DC universe by way of Game of Thrones or something like that, right? And here we get a sequel that doesn't involve Tom Taylor, except for that Tom Taylor, the writer of the original, does have a backup story here with, I think it's Riccardo Federici. Yes, it is. And it's decent and it's cool. But I was really nervous. There's the backup story right there. But I was really nervous about this book. I was not really super looking forward to it. It felt like a cash grab to me. But after reading it, I loved it. I really did. It's interesting because it's got this like monochromatic black and white approach to it. And this takes place after the events of Dark Knights of Steel. It focuses in on the Deathstroke of this era. A little bit of Vandal Savage, some Killer Frost action. But I liked it. I really did. I was engaged. I was involved. And I actually thought it was more solid than the original Dark Knights of Steel, which I loved. So this is a very welcome surprise this week in comics. Then we got Wonder Woman number 11. Tom King stepping away, not from the book, but from his current ongoing storyline to do a tie-in to Absolute Power, and it completely derails everything I've been loving about this book. Wonder Woman by Tom King's been one of those things that I wasn't quite sold on it at first, but then as it continued, I started really liking it. And it's become one of my favorite DC books out right now. But man, this was kind of a clunky tie-in that felt like it derailed the rest of the series. I do appreciate DC for having a plan, for having these tie-ins that feel like they matter, but this one right here just does not work for me. I would much rather have just focused in on what the story was, but this, of course, gives the artist Danielson Perry a little bit of a break. The art in here is by Tony Daniel, and it's all right. It's decent enough. It's okay. It's okay. I was kind of disappointed. Then we got Superman number 16, an Absolute Power tie-in that I loved. This was great. So in Absolute Power issue number 1, Superman loses his powers and gets shot, right? This is the ramifications of that. This is the aftermath of that. This is what happens to Superman, how it's tied into his world, and some really exciting surprises here. Josh Williamson, he knows how to do these tie-ins. He knows how to make them feel earned, organic, and worthy, right? And that's what he's doing here. Plus, you got Jamal Campbell back on the artwork, and you know that doesn't hurt. Then we got Batman Superman World's Finest, issue number 29. This is bringing a conclusion to this whole fifth dimensional imp story. It's been fun. Dan Mora's artwork is so freaking amazing. It's got some great Zatanna moments. You know me, I love Zatanna. Also, Zatanna all up in Superman number 16. I overshared not too long ago about how much of a crush I have on Zatanna. But no, this was a really solid conclusion. Mark Waid, once again, able to craft a story that's classic and nostalgic and Silver Agey, but with a modern flair. So I thought it was super cool. I enjoyed that one. Then we got Nightwing 116. This is the end of the Tom Taylor, Bruno Redondo run on Nightwing. This isn't the last issue. I think there's 2 more after this, right? But they're basically deconstructing Nightwing and Dick Grayson. Bruno Redondo's artwork is cool. It doesn't really push boundaries here in this 3rd issue of Fallen Grayson. But the story hits a really cool beat and a really cool note. The connection to Deadman, I really do appreciate. And the ending, I'm really excited to see what happens next. Because it's kind of like Batman Prodigal, which was just brought up on Rockin' Robbie Live, but Batman Prodigal, but reversed a little bit, and if you know, you know. So I thought it was pretty cool. Titans number 13 is here. I think I'm done with Titans. I was reading Titans. I was enjoying it. I thought it was okay. I never thought it was one of the best things out there. We're dealing with the idea that Raven is possessed by the evil demonic version of herself, and then we have a big reveal like Nightwing finds out at the end of the last issue, and then this one kind of undercuts it and it's like, I don't know. And this issue mostly focused in on Beast Boy, and I'm not into it. I thought the art was subpar. I thought the writing was subpar. I just didn't super dig on it. That might be my last issue of Titans. Then we got Green Lantern War Journal issue number 11. Really like this book. It's a shame that it's ending after issue number 12, though my boy Mark Spears does have a cover. By the way, I didn't really read Rat City number 4 this week from Spawn because I'm just not digging that book, but I wish I had it with me because my boy Mark Spears did a cover for it. That is dope. So Mark, you did a great job there. Did a great job. But Mark's got a cover for Green Lantern War Journal number 12. That is freaking awesome. Anyway, I'm loving this book. Everything's coming to a head. Some could say emotionally sappy revelations or reveals here in this issue, but I'm all here for it. I love how he's playing with the lore and the mythos of the Green Lantern rings and everything else, how it's tying in together. I just think this is a super solid book. The penultimate issue of Green Lantern War Journal. Hellblazer, Dead in America, issue number 7. This, to me, might be the weakest issue of the series so far, but I still did enjoy it. You got great artwork from Aaron Campbell. You got great usage of the character of John Constantine, really getting into some stuff. But the whole thing has kind of been about the story of America. And they're telling us this story, and it's connected to some Sandman stuff, and it's decent and it's cool, but this one just didn't quite hit like the previous issues. And I also felt like a little bit of a disconnect between this one and the last issue, but that could be all on me and not on the actual writing. Maybe I need to go back and reread those issues. But Cy Spurrier is a little verbose and challenging and has a lot of concepts. So it's not an easy reread. All right, from Marvel, we've got Phoenix issue number 1, From the Ashes, A New Beginning. So X-Men number 1 dropped last week. I was disappointed in it. It felt more like a coda to the Krakoan era instead of like a true new beginning jumping on point. Phoenix just didn't do it for me. Jean is out in space now, deciding that she's going to be a cosmic hero, and that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So it's cool to see how some other people in the galaxy respond to Phoenix and her presence as a hero, and how they are trepidatious about it and a little wary of her involvement as a hero. But it just didn't super work for me. I thought like it felt misplaced. Like Jean should be with the X-Men on Earth, not in space as a cosmic hero. It's cool if that's what you want to do, but it just didn't work for me. It felt a little bit flat, though the art was decent enough. Then we got Namor issue number 1, or if you believe the Black Panther sequel, Namor, but let's all be honest, it's Namor. But Namor number 1, this is Jason Aaron, and it's all right. The art's pretty solid. The art's decent. This is about Namor. He's in prison. He's being mistreated by his guards. Meanwhile, in Atlantis, there's been this stuff going on where there are 7 new leaders of Atlantis or something like that. So Namor's in prison, and he's depressed, and he's sad, and he's mistreated, and all this kind of stuff. And he's going to have to get out of prison to reclaim his throne or something like that. This one did not work for me. It was all right. It's got some backstory about Namor, but none of it really felt needed or deserved or earned. And I just thought this book kind of fell flat. Another book I thought fell a little bit flat was Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, issue number 1. Elektra is still another Daredevil. Marvel, let's be honest. You don't need 2 or 3 Spider-Men. You don't need 2 Daredevils. You don't need 2 Wolverines. Can we not just like let characters breathe and be who they are? Like Elektra's a great character. One of my favorite characters in all of Marvel history is Elektra. I don't need her to put on horns and the Daredevil costume to elevate her in some kind of form or fashion. That being said, this book just didn't work for me. Is decent, I guess. I'm kind of done with that stuff. Anyway, Ultimate X-Men number 5. Peach Momoko doing a great job with this book, building an X-Men book that we've never had, not vibing or it's not really connected to any other X books we've ever had. It's a different feeling thing, and a lot of people probably don't like it because it's not your typical X book. And that's fine. You don't have to like the book. Me personally, I'm liking this look into trauma. I'm liking this look into Japanese folklore. I'm liking this whole new, from the ground up approach to the X-Men. For instance, Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man, is a little bit different than Amazing Spider-Man, but it's still basically Peter Parker Spider-Man. Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther, is pretty much almost the same story as regular Black Panther. Ultimate X-Men is completely different than any other X book we've ever gotten. I love Peach Momoko's sense of whimsy in this book and really diving deep into the horror elements of it at times. All right, from Dark Horse, we've got Paranoid Gardens, issue number 1. This is a new book from Gerard Way and Sean Simon with Chris Weston artwork, and we're going to give the cover of the week to Paranoid Gardens because it's a die-cut cover, y'all. It's a die-cut cover. I am such a 90s sucker. I'm like loving the die-cut cover. So I thought this was a really cool book. It was hard to like really fully get engaged and involved in the story, the concept, and the characters because I don't think they really delivered too much in the first issue, but they delivered just enough. First of all, I'm a huge Gerard Way fan, so whether it's My Chemical Romance or Umbrella Academy or any of his other comic book work, like his Doom Patrol run, which I think is fantastic, I like this, you know? And Sean Simon's a good, solid co-writer for Gerard. It works. It's about this, like, mental health facility or something like that. It involves superheroes. I don't know. It's really wacky, really weird, really hard to explain, but something about it really spoke to me, and I liked it. And Chris Weston on the art, it was top freaking notch. Then we've got Usagi Yojimbo the Crow, issue number 4 of 5, the penultimate issue of Usagi Yojimbo the Crow. Stan Sakai doing what he's been doing for over 40 years right now, which is just crafting a great story in the comic book form. Great cartooning, great lettering, really solid stuff. Every issue of Usagi Yojimbo is a treat, and if you've never read Usagi Yojimbo, why? What is stopping you? If you've ever taken one thing from me and this channel, it's that you should read Usagi Yojimbo. Seriously, get the hardcover box set from Fantagraphics with all the old school stuff. Get the Dark Horse Saga reprints. They are worth it, and they are cool. From Dynamite, we've got Powerpuff Girls, issue number 1 by Kelly Thompson. I loved this. I'm a big Powerpuff Girls fan, and if you are a Powerpuff Girls fan, you owe it to yourself to pick up this book because it is straight up in that flavor. So Bubbles, Blossom, and Buttercup, they wind up doing this like project in school where it shows them what they want to be. So you get to kind of see each Powerpuff Girl kind of envisioning what they want in their life and trying to self-actualize into it. It seems way heavier than it actually is, but it was cool, and I love that foil cover by Leonardo Romero. That book was solid. So was Thundercats issue number 6. We got Declan Shalvey and Drew Moss back for a Panthro-centric issue focusing also on the Vulture Men. This was really cool, kind of like an in-between issue. It didn't feel like a filler issue because it feels like it sets up a lot of stuff, but a big focus in on Panthro, and I'm glad. The last issue of Thundercats didn't really work for me. It was a big fill-in issue that didn't really feel super connected to anything. This, though, feels like that kind of like step back, get ready, Arc 2 is fully coming. It kind of felt more like that. Speaking of the Nostalgia Police, we got Biker Mice from Mars, issue number 1 from Oni Press, the Nacelleverse. None of this Nacelleverse stuff has really been working for me. The RoboForce stuff didn't, and neither did Biker Mice from Mars. It feels like a really overwrought and overly dramatic, overly melodramatic approach to Biker Mice from Mars, which could just be a fun nostalgia bait comic, but instead they're trying to put too much depth into it that doesn't feel earned, and it doesn't feel like it feels out of place. You know what I'm saying? So the art was fine, but the story was really overwrought just a little bit. Did not do much for me. Speaking of not doing much for me, The Last Wardens, issue number 1 from Mad Cave. This book was all over the place. I thought it was a little bit clunky. It's about this woman from a bad home. Her father's abusive. She finds her long-lost brother. Something weird and twisty happens towards the end. That was slightly interesting, but it didn't completely sell me on this book, so it kind of lost me real quick. The art was all right. The story was just all right, but I don't think I'm coming back for issue number 2. And then from Boom Studios, we've got Man's Best, issue number 5. It's all right. It's all right. The best thing about Man's Best has been Jesse Lonigan's artwork. The artwork is exceptional. It is exceptional. Like wild, crazy composition, interesting panel design, page layouts, cool stuff like that. It's a little bit like We 3 in space, just a little bit. Homeward Bound meets We 3 meets space. There's some cool ideas being played with here, but I guess it's a satisfying enough ending, but the whole series, just story-wise, didn't super work for me. It felt just a little, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but it just did not work for me. But the art has been fantastic. All right. So that's what I read. That's what I thought. So let's recap. This is probably one of the shortest weekly comic book reviews we've ever done. Destro was freaking awesome. That's the pick of the week. Witchblade was a decent enough reboot. Redcoat number 4 was the best issue of that series yet, and it gets the smell of the week. Fish Flies number 7 felt like an abrupt ending, but it felt like an earned ending that I want to go back and reread all the issues. Plastic Death and Dolls issue number 2 dives into the past of our character and sets up the current story in a really cool fashion. Remote Space issue number 2 wasn't as solid as issue number 1, but the art and the craft behind it was really solid. Misery number 2 flopped for me. Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter really shocked and surprised me. I thought that was really good. Wonder Woman, Tom King steps away from his main story to do an Absolute Power tie-in. It just does not work for me. Superman number 16, though, is an Absolute Power tie-in that does work for me. Then we got World's Finest issue number 29. really great conclusion to this recent fifth dimensional imp story. Tom Taylor's doing a great job with Nightwing, but not so much on Titans. Titans losing me. I may be done. Green Lantern War Journal, one more issue. We'll see what happens, but I'm loving that book. Hellblazer Dead in America, probably the weakest issue of that series so far, but still a really solid Vertigo style Hellblazer comic. Phoenix was a little bit clunky. Jean Grey is a cosmic hero. Don't really need it. Namor was a bit clunky for me. Didn't really work. I didn't like it. Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, a bit clunky. Just did not work. Ultimate X-Men number 5, though, was great. I really did like that. Cover of the week goes to Paranoid Gardens, issue number 1, a new book from Gerard Way and Sean Simon and Chris Weston. Great art. Interesting story. Doesn't completely grab me in the first issue, but I trust Gerard, so we'll see what happens. Usagi Yojimbo, The Crow, issue number 4, one of the best comics out there. Powerpuff Girls, issue number 1 from Dynamite. They're doing a great job lately with their licensed comics, including Thundercats, issue number 6, which I thought was a great return to form after a really not so good filler issue. Biker Mice from Mars is a melodramatic, overwrought reinterpretation of Biker Mice from Mars. Did anybody ask for that? That's so weird. All right, then we got The Last Wardens, just kind of fell flat for me. And then Man's Best was all right, but it was the art that really sold that book. So that's what I read. That's what I thought. What are you reading? What are you digging? What are you thinking? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Sorry that we've done it in such a random fashion this week, but don't worry, we'll get back on track very soon. Anyway, I've been rocking Robbie Billups. Thanks for rocking with us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been rocking Robbie Billups. I've already said that. Station. Keep on reading. Pop, pop. Mo. I'm trying to find the button. Boom. See you guys.